wabaye iki ku kaboko?
Yarandashuwe umunsi baje kwata kuko twararwanye nyine turarwana amasasu aciranye ndakijugunya ndiruka.
Igisasu wararasaga nawe?
Wowe amasasu aciranye mu mbunda ndahita nirutse bamwikiza amasasu nimero yamfata.
Warwaniraga mayimayi? Wumvaga umeze gute? Se wumvaga biguteye ubwoba kubona wakurashe? Wumvaga umeze gute?
Kada ntabwo.
Wari ufite imyaka ingahe igihe bakurasaga akaboko?
The presence of these little boys here is closely connected to our recent history of genocide and war that saw more than 1 million innocent Tutsis being killed by the extremist regime that was here, that was ousted in 1994. And when the genocidal regime that was ousted in 1994 was overthrown by the Rwandese Patriotic Army, they moved towards the Democratic Republic of Congo, by then known as Zaire. And while they were in Zaire, they continued to put together every effort that would help them come back and overthrow the Kigali government. And in the bid to do that, they continued to recruit massively, including women and children.
Well, kids are brought into the ranks of militias for various reasons and in different ways. You know, in places like northern Uganda with the Lord's Resistance Army and Joseph Kony, their policy has been to go out and to forcefully abduct children. Often one of the first things that they do is they force those kids to commit horrendous crimes. I mean, some of these kids are forced to kill one or both of their parents or members of their families or members of their communities so that there's a clean break between their former lives and their current lives, because they're no longer able, there's no home for them to go back to, and there's no community that will accept them. The second way is kids who are orphaned in war, they're displaced in war, and they really don't see any other option besides, well, if I don't fight, I'm going to be killed. Many of them have raped, and they have committed horrendous acts of sexual violence. I mean, young boys who are 16 who've done everything from, pushed a bayonet through a woman's vagina and caused her uterus to rupture. I mean, just things that you just can't reconcile. And, when you talk to these kids, I mean, you just don't know what the future holds for them. Globally, it's estimated, the United Nations estimates that there are roughly 300,000 child soldiers. In reality, we don't really know how many kids there are out there that have either fought in wars or are currently fighting in wars. What we do know is that it has been a problem that is pervasive, and in particular in many civil wars, children have been used and exploited as part of combat. So Sudan, Burundi, Rwanda, the Congo, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Somalia, northern Uganda with the Lord's Resistance Army, as combatants as well in Afghanistan and in Iraq. So, again, when you look at the global roadmap, we know it's a significant problem. In terms of the process of demobilizing kids and getting them back into their communities, particularly in the context of the Congo, it is part of the peace process. So as various groups have signed on to the peace process, they have agreed to demobilize their combatants that are under the age of 18. They're normally handed over to the United Nations, to the peacekeeping forces and the DDR team, and then they are sent to rehabilitation and reintegration centers.
So the support we are providing is mainly, I would say, in 3 phases. the very first step is to collaborate with MONUC so that every effort is made to get these children away from the armed forces and bring them to Rwanda. The other effort has to do with the provision of basic needs that this child has been denied for quite some time while he participated in acts of war. Such interventions include providing food. Many of them return when they are malnourished, providing clothing, providing shelter. Many of them have lived in forests for quite many years. The other program that is part of rehabilitation, as I earlier mentioned, has to do with psychosocial support. This is a very key component of our rehabilitation program that we provide here. Has to do with socializing activities. These children need to regain their childhood, to do some sporting, to play, to participate in cultural events, especially those Rwandan cultural activities that transmit messages of peace and reconciliation. We initiated a special program here in the center that teaches these boys to read and write, because in 2004 we realized that more than 80% were returning and unable to read and write.
I think the single most important piece of information for people who are looking to understand this issue is that as we focus our attention on Iraq and Afghanistan, you have generations of kids who are growing up knowing only war and who are being forced to fight in wars that they didn't start and continue with wars that they don't even understand. You have a lot of other kids in places that are now moving into a period of peace and stability who need help and who need support. And, you know, it's important that we pay attention to what's going on in Africa, because there are some places where this is, you know, Sierra Leone and Liberia, this is their best shot. This has been their best shot in 20 years. And if we don't invest in it, we're going to continue chasing our tails. And that's the cycle of violence that we see all the time. Now's the time for us to invest in Africa. It's long overdue. It's at a critical point. And we can't continue to ignore it at the expense of other conflicts, because otherwise we're just going to continue to see violence and instability in many parts of that continent.